Mirage is currently a monster in lane, being really hard to push out with the healing they do with Scarabs and the damage they do with Mark. In the mid to late game, they're really hard to trap down because of the survivability that their Tornado provides and their ability to teleport around the map and counter push you. They're just a really strong character, and this video is going to help you learn about him. Hey, hi, how are you? My name is Felt, and welcome to my beginner's guide to Mirage. So why is Mirage so good? How do they work? What do their abilities do? How does this character function? And why are they seeing more play than they used to, even post-nerfs? Well, first things first, we should probably talk about what their abilities do and how they work. So first things first, let's talk about their first ability, Fire Scarabs. You infest an enemy with Fire Scarabs, stealing life from them and causing them to deal reduced damage. By default, this ability steals 8 HP per second. It applies a 20% damage penalty to the target, and it lasts for 7 seconds. It's a very strong ability with what appears to be really bad spirit scaling, 0.1 spirit scaling. However, that is on a per second ability, so obviously the more spirit power you have, the more this goes up, making it a bit scarier than you'd imagine as Mirage gets more and more spirit power as the game goes on. Now, the upgrades. The first one is quite simple. You get 7 additional health steal per second. This puts it up to 15 health per second, and overall makes the ability just better. You're taking away more health and you're healing yourself more. That scaling has stayed the same though, so that's something to keep in mind. Next upgrade just gives you 2 additional charges, which just means that you can stack up to 4 charges of Fire Scarabs in your back pocket, ready for use whenever you feel like it. It makes the ability very strong in lane, because if you run around and run boxes between waves, you can then just stack up charges and have multiple charges for when you come back to lane. And this health steal does indeed stack. It doesn't stack on the same target. They can only have 1 Fire Scarab active on them at a time, but if you have 2 targets tagged with 2 different Scarabs, you do sap life from both of them at the same time, healing you for effectively twice the amount. The final upgrade for Fire Scarabs is actually quite strong. It adds an extra 15% damage penalty, which means that targets hit by your Fire Scarabs now deal 35% less damage, which is a lot. On top of that, you got increased spirit scaling now, going up from 0.1 to 0.27. This is quite a strong upgrade, as I'm sure you can imagine. It is over 1.5 times more scaling for the ability, and is just a big upgrade. However, early in the game, you don't have the scaling, so as you'll see in my build that we'll talk about later, I typically delay this for a little bit, but it's still a very powerful upgrade for a very powerful ability. Next up, let's talk about Dust Devil, Mirage's second ability. It's kind of torn between how it used to function and how it functions now at the moment, where it used to be much more about knocking people up into the air and keeping them isolated so that you could take them down, and that was a big reason why you used the ability. Now it has a lot more to it, so let's talk about it. It's an ability with a pretty long cooldown by default, 36 seconds. You dash 20 meters, and according to the description here, you transform yourself into a whirlwind that travels forwards, damaging enemies, slowing their move speed and lifting them up in the air. After emerging from the tornado, you gain bullet evasion. By default, it does 65 damage, it lifts someone for 0.3 seconds, and it gives you 30% bullet evasion chance. It has a 4-meter radius on the ability. The bullet evasion lasts for 4 seconds, the slow lasts for 3 seconds, and it is a minus 30% move speed. Now, that is a lot of text for one little ability, but the bottom line is that it does a lot of stuff, you become more survivable when you use it, and you can use it to disrupt what enemies are doing to you. The first upgrade, very simple, plus 60 damage, nothing to really write home about. The second upgrade takes off 12 seconds of cooldown, making it a 24-second cooldown ability, which is a lot faster, and you now have 60% bullet evasion, making this ability a really strong survival tool into bullet-heavy comps. If you see Viper, Haze, Wraith on the enemy team, for example, just know that you're going to be a lot safer than the rest of your team, because if you use Dust Devil, you're going to have 60% bullet evasion. Now, the final upgrade is where this ability gets pretty cool. You can recast the ability within 6 seconds, gives you a 0.3 second extension on the lift duration, taking it up to a little over a half a second, and you get better spirit scaling, up to 1.3 times. The exciting thing is that because you can recast it, that means that if you're doing it quote-unquote perfectly, you cast it, you get 4 seconds of bullet evasion, and then you recast it and you get another 4 seconds of bullet evasion, leading to 8 seconds of bullet evasion. Combine that with Echo Shard to recast the ability, or Superior Duration to get extra duration on it, you're going to have a lot of bullet evasion for a very long time, and making all those M1 carries on the enemy team think twice about fighting you. Mark is the iconic ability of Mirage. It's what most of their kit revolves around, and just generally how they function, but it's also one of the most complicated ones, so let's talk a lot about it. Your shots apply a gen mark on the target. When the mark expires or is consumed, it deals spirit damage, and the target is briefly revealed on the map. Each added mark doubles the current damage. So, it by default just applies when you shoot someone if you have the ability unlocked. It doesn't do anything until it expires, or you can activate the ability itself to manually consume the mark. Jin's Mark automatically deals its damage when it hits maximum stacks. It has 11 base damage, and its base scaling is 0.35, but that does factor into the fact that the damage per mark is doubled on a per mark basis. You can only have 4 max marks on a target by default. You can only apply it every 3 seconds by default until you get cooldown. This is affected by cooldown. It lasts for 5 seconds by default after you activate it, or it is consumed by time or because you hit max marks. The target is revealed for 6 seconds, but you have to be within 40 meters to proc the mark itself. That is a lot of stuff, but the bottom line is, as you shoot people, they get marks. And you want to max out those marks to do as much damage as possible, and once you hit max marks, it automatically pops, and if enough time passes, it automatically pops, or you can pop it on purpose to show someone off on the map. Its first upgrade means that on proc, it'll apply a fading 60% slow for 0.8 seconds. 60% is a very powerful slow, but the way that it fades makes it so that they just get slowed for a second, and then they're back to normal within half a second. Second upgrade gives you plus 20 base damage, which adds up a lot more than you'd think because of the way that it multiplies, and adds 3-second multiplier duration, which sounds really funny when it's said like that, but the bottom line is the mark now lasts 8 seconds instead of 5. At max level, the ability gets even more confusing, as you can tell from all this extra text on screen. The mark now can be procced even faster. It has a 2-second per target cooldown by default instead of 3. You get an extra mark, so it goes up to 5 max marks, which, as I'm sure you know, will make the damage go up exponentially. And when the final level goes off, meaning you get to 5 marks on the target, it automatically stuns the victim for 0.5 seconds, which is enough to really cause problems in teamfights in the mid to late game if people aren't keeping track of how many marks they have on them. And the scaling is still 0.35, but that base damage is multiplied by 2 per mark, which just really makes your damage ramp up a lot faster than you'd ever expect based on the low base number on it. It gets to the point where it hits for the hundreds and thousands in the mid to late game if you have enough shred rolling in your build and the enemy team isn't building enough defense for you. This ability is very strong. It will cause a lot of problems, but it's also a really good harassment tool early. But you do really have to buy items to make the mark feel better, so don't be surprised if at base level it feels a little weird. Let's talk about Mirage's ultimate. It's the most unique part of the kit, and it's overall just a relatively odd ability. It's one of our only global ultimates that we have in this game. There's a handful of them, but in case y'all don't know the generalized term for global ultimate, it is an ultimate that can affect other parts of the map when you are not there. Think of Grey Talon Owl, think of Page throwing their horses all the way across the map, and think of Mirage using Traveler. Traveler is a slightly reworked from how it used to, but now you just target a location on the minimap. After a brief wait, you teleport to that location. Taking damage during the wait time period causes the teleport to be interrupted, meaning that if you take damage before or during you trying to teleport, you have to wait 4 seconds to try again. There's only 2 seconds of wait time on the teleport, and then you will teleport to wherever you want to go on the map. As I'm sure you could realize, this is a very good ability for just heavy rotations and just being where your team needs you to be. And you can also still split push at the same time, because then you can rotate in response to other people doing stuff. Upgrading Traveler makes it a lot better of an ability, though. You get 3 meters move speed when you land, and you get 20% fire rate when you land for 12 seconds after you teleport, making you much scarier when you show up at a random point on the map, because you'll show up with a buff that makes you chase down people better, and basically do more damage because you're shooting faster. It's quite strong. The next upgrade is also pretty strong. When you teleport around the map, you get a 400 barrier that scales with your spirit power. It has 0.6 spirit scaling, which, as I'm sure you realize, is not that bad. It means that effectively half your spirit power will get turned into more barrier. In case y'all don't know, at the moment, a lot of spirit carriers are getting to around 200 spirit power by the mid to late game if they're really farming efficiently and getting all the items that they need, which means that this would really be a 600 barrier in the late game. And the final upgrade, and probably the scariest part, is the fact that you get 80 seconds of cooldown off of this ability at max rank, meaning that every 40 seconds by default, you get to teleport around the map wherever you want to be, and when you show up, you have a big old barrier, extra fire rate, and extra move speed. For even more context as to why this is so scary, I've purchased Transcendent Cooldown, which is an item that I'll usually pick up on Mirage if the games go long enough. As you can see, that is now a 30-second cooldown, and the barrier got a little better because I bought a spirit item, which means that this ability just throws you around the map really fast and makes the enemy team have to really watch their backs if they show up unprotected at various spots on the map. They also have to be really careful with you split pushing and then being able to teleport out if people start showing up and you can hide for just long enough to get out. As I'm sure you've noticed in the background, this is my Mirage build. This build will be down in the description. I will give you the build ID, and as you can tell, the name is right there. It'll be made by Felt. You should be able to find it pretty easily. The ability order, as you can see, is right here. I level Scarabs first and get 2 points in it, max Mark, finish maxing Scarabs. Currently, I've been maxing Dust Devil and then maxing Ultimate, but I've toyed around with having them flip-flopped, but gun carries feel really good at the moment, and getting Dust Devil maxed before Ultimate means that this is coming online around the 25 to 30k mark, as opposed to the 40k mark like it used to be. As always, I try and make sure these builds are updated and proper, but don't be surprised if some of them fall out of date. I do my best to keep up with them, but I have a lot of builds out there at this point, as you can probably see from my moderately extensive beginner's guide series. But let's hop into what these items are, why I buy them, and what I like them for. This top line here is our generally offensive items that I buy in lane and in the early rotations period of the game. I always start with monster rounds at the moment, because one, it gives you that +1 out of combat regen, which is invaluable if you start having to run boxes early, and also, your abilities don't help you clear very well. Your abilities are mostly to poke the enemy team in lane. You're not like Mina, where it's really easy to proc bites. You have to really stack up your mark to make it do damage, or throw a scarab at something to do damage, and throwing those on wave feels not the best, so I almost always buy monster rounds early, so that I have really good gun damage versus wave, so I can actually push wave without having to worry too much about anything other than shooting it. I've been experimenting with extra spirit this early. Sometimes I delay it until I buy improved spirit, but right now it feels really good to be this early. It buffs scarabs quite early into the build, and it makes it just feel a little better overall. After that, I get into and finish my gun spike. I get high velocity rounds and do opening rounds. Opening rounds feels really, really good right now. The extra weapon damage that you get on targets above 50% is really nice. The 7 spirit power is really nice. The 8% flat weapon damage is really nice. The item's just good. It got nerfed a little bit recently. We still buy it on Mirage. It still just feels really good. Recharging Rush is next. Recharging Rush is a pretty powerful item. It allows you to, after doing a certain amount of damage, get a charge back of an ability you have. You know what ability you have that has charges that really likes to annoy people in lane? Fire Scarabs. These two together are pretty good. It also gives you a little bit of max ammo to work with so that you have a little more bullets in the gun so that you don't have to reload quite as often. You won't be proccing it a ton super early because doing 200 damage early in the game is not as easy as you'd think, but between the 10% weapon damage on this, the 8% on this, and then the 30% bonus damage on people who are high HP, you'll probably proc it often enough in lane to be an annoyance. I'm currently liking Spirit Shredder bullets. I know a lot of people have started shifting towards Kinetic Dash in the early to mid game because of its general strength. I'm still liking Spirit Shredder bullets. Shredding Spirit Resist and giving yourself free Spirit Lifesteal in the early game is really, really strong, and it makes both your Scarabs and your Mark be quite scary. Usually around the time you get Spirit Shredder bullets, you've started putting points into your Mark as well, which means that you're not just buffing Scarabs, you're buffing Mark as well, making this item a pretty solid buy. Next up is Compressed Cooldown. Because of how weird Mark cooldown is, you kind of like to put points into it early. You could buy this even earlier than this. You could probably buy it before Spirit Shredder bullets if you want to, but I just kind of like getting my gun spike online so that I can proc Recharging Rush as often as possible, because the early gun spike is quite important on Mirage, because getting that chunk of gun damage early means that it's easier to proc Recharging Rush, and it's just easier to do gun damage. Your gun is actually pretty strong at the moment, and so being able to do more gun damage is good. Being able to proc Marks faster is good, though. That's why this is here. Improved Spirit is here because I like going Boundless Spirit on Mirage at the moment. I know a lot of people have instead been going Surge of Power. I'm not the biggest fan of it because I feel like you like your bullets to be purposeful on Mirage right now, and purposefully proccing Mark the way that you want to, and not just spamming as many bullets downrange as you can. But if you are that type of person, don't listen to me. Go buy the other item, or follow another build. This is how I like to build them at the moment, and I feel like Spirit Power is pretty good, and that extra out of combat regen really adds up. Mystic Vuln is also down here because I think that extra tiny bit of Spirit Resist early, as well as that 8% Spirit Shred early, is quite strong. You tag someone with the Scarab, start stacking marks, they're going to have a really hard time not just exploding to your damage in the early game. You can replace this with Superior Cooldown if you'd rather want to get more of all of your abilities instead of more of just your mark. It also gives you more out of combat regen on the item than this does. But I just like Mystic Vuln at the moment. It makes my mark hit really hard, and it makes me just generally feel scary in the early to mid game. Since you usually have around 10k souls by the time you buy Mystic Vuln, this is usually that point in the game where laning phases are starting to end, and you're starting to rotate around the map and use your ultimate to cause problems elsewhere. Being able to shred resistances twice over between Mystic Vuln and Spirit Shredder bullets means that if your team is spirit damage, they're going to be doing big damage, and you're also going to be doing really big damage. We do have our classic lane safety items. We have our emotional support healing right over here, which can be used as you're rotating around the map and farming boxes. Extra regen is seeing a lot of play at the moment. People are really liking that +3 health regen and that 1 extra out of combat regen. I think the item is very good if you're in lanes where you'll probably get healing right shot off of you. Definitely worth buying if you're worried about your survivability. Now getting to our green spike here, we have Dispel Magic and Reactive Barrier, and these are just my personal preference of the moment for what I like to buy to get my green spike online. Dispel Magic just feels really good right now. Mirage is a character that is generally pretty safe with Dust Devil, so being able to dispel any problems that come your way and then just Dust Devil your way on out of dodge makes you feel even harder to trap down and kill, which are already hard to do because of Fire Scarabs and Jen's Mark. I also like Reactive Barrier for the same reason. There's been lots of hard CC and also lots of immobilizings, sleeps, and silences going around the game lately, so I just generally like Reactive Barrier at the moment. However, Enchanter's Emblem and Healbane are also great items, which you can replace Reactive Barrier with, or you can replace Dispel Magic with both of these and go Enchanter's Healbane Reactive as your build instead. I generally think that all of these items are almost equally as good at the moment, and you can honestly shove all of them in the build right now, but at the moment, to keep the amount of items in the build to an amount that works for when you have no slots, I generally like to keep it small with Dispel Magic and Reactive Barrier so that if I don't have a walker at the, 15.2k mark, I'm not trying to panic and go, what item do I sell already? Now as we go into the mid to late game items, as you can see we're at the 15,200 mark, Ricochet is usually what I like to go next, and if you're slot locked, you can just drop off of monster rounds, because while the item is quite good and will be helpful to help you farm, getting Ricochet online pretty dang early will really, really help you out in the long run overall, because I find that Ricochet is one of Mirage's biggest power spikes. Because of how Mark works, Ricochet actually spreads Mark around in a team fight. And usually around the 20k mark, people are starting bigger and bigger team fights, fighting over Urn, fighting over mid-boss, fighting over walkers, any guardians that haven't fallen yet. Sometimes that does happen. But generally there's just lots of fights, and Ricochet makes you a bigger presence in team fights. Because you're so single target, you can actually be active in team fights and do more than just target one person, kill them off, and then have to go to the next one afterwards. This means that if you are playing that style of go after one person, kill them off, and then go to the next, you can do it, and you're probably accidentally hurting the rest of the enemy team at the same time. Ricochet is just very good right now, in my opinion, for a character like Mirage who really wants to spread those on-hit bullet effects. Next up is Toxic Bullets, and if you're still doing that 1v1 fighting style in the early to mid game and just really trying to make sure that you push the advantage you have, you can skip saving up for Ricochet and just get Toxic Bullets next. If you took my potential advice earlier and you skipped Mystic Vuln, you can buy this, because if you don't have Mystic Vuln, you'll have an empty slot available to buy Toxic Bullets with. You'll have bought superior cooldown though, so your build will look more like this at that point in time. So around the 24k mark, if you skip Mystic Vuln, you can have Ricochet, Toxic Bullets, superior cooldown going for your build, as well as everything else that you'll see here. You will still have to sell monster rounds if you're trying to make sure that you don't go into these locked slots. However, if you have gotten at least one walker, your build will probably look a little more like this, and this is typically what we like our build to look like around that 24-25k mark, because then we will be incredibly strong, and we don't need to get walkers down, and we can just continue to fight and still have things available to upgrade. As you can tell, the next few upgrades are things that work if you're slot locked. Superior cooldown over regular cooldown is good. It just makes everything come up faster. Spirit Rend is even more shred for your build, and it's a pretty good spike for your gun damage because, as you notice here, it pushes us right up to that 16k investment into gun, getting us from 70% to 85% bonus gun damage. The superior cooldown does not do near as much, but it is still very, very good. All that extra cooldown will really take your build quite a bit into this game. Escalating Exposure is next, and this is a really big power spike. On top of pushing you all the way up to the 9.6k investment in Spirit Power, jumping you 2 tiers of investment, it gives you that Spirit Amp per stack if you have Spirit damage applied to people. In case y'all aren't knowers, Toxic Bullets does proc Escalating Exposure and will apply it over time. Your Fire Scarabs will also proc Escalating Exposure and apply it over time, meaning that as you're fighting people, you may want to get a Scarab on someone and then start procking your Jen's Mark and then start procking Toxic Bullets as well, so that you can just keep your Spirit Amp rolling, so that maybe you'll have like 4-ish stacks of Escalating Exposure on someone by the time your Mark pops, and that'll make them really get shredded. Next item that I like to buy that is also something that you can only buy if you're not slot locked is Superior Duration. I just like this item a lot in Mirage. It works with toxic bullets and a lot of our items. It works with escalating exposure, but it also works on our abilities. It makes Jin's Mark and Fire Scarabs last even longer. It makes your buff from Dust Devil and Traveler last even longer. It's just really good right now. I just really like the item. 28% ability duration on everything is really nice. Plus it gives you a little 8% bullet resist. And last but certainly not least is Boundless Spirit. Just a general really good item for Mirage. They like all the bonus spirit power. The base health and out of combat regen is just like icing on the cake. And as you can see here, this actually puts us at exactly 40,000 souls, which if y'all don't know, 40k souls, it's actually a little above 40k souls, but still generally, 40k souls is where builds quote unquote end at the moment. You get your last boon to get all of your abilities upgraded at the 40k soul mark. So having our build basically cap out its biggest power spike of Boundless Spirit means that we'll also have a capped out Traveler, Jin's Mark, Dust Devil, and Fire Scarabs all at this 40,000 soul mark, making us a really big force to be reckoned with once we hit this point. So you hit 40k souls, but your game's not over. What else do you buy? Well, we have tons of options here in this build that you could also buy ahead of this point if you really wanted to, but let's talk through all of them. Counterspell is mostly good for those high Spirit Burst characters, think Grey Talon, mostly think Lash because then you can counterspell the ult picking you up, but also think Apollo because you can counterspell the giant dash through everyone aura farming ability that he has. Endom's in here because it upgrades from reactive barrier, and if you're getting hard CC'd a lot, it's pretty good. It allows you a big old barrier and it allows you to just get out a bit easier for a second because it also half refunds your abilities. 20%'s a lot. It's not the craziest thing at the moment, and not a lot of people are very high on it, but I do like the item in general, so it's pretty worth it. If you don't like it that much, just buy Unstoppable instead, because then you get to control when you go Unstoppable. Next up is Siphon Bullets. I think Siphon Bullets is actually quite strong at the moment, but it's mostly into teams that have really high HP pools, and that usually a lot of teams don't get to the point where they have the super high HP pools until past the 40k mark, in my experience. However, if you're running into this problem where the enemy team has just massive HP pools, and you're having a really hard time actually shredding through them with your Mark and Spirit Shred, you can buy Siphon Bullets to just steal some of that max HP. Make yourself more survivable, make them less. Commander's Kevlar is also kind of in that conversation, but this is really only something that I get once I have ult maxed, because once you have ult maxed and this, every 40 seconds when you teleport around, you get 1,000 barrier, 35 spirit power, 20% fire rate, 3 move speed, and I don't believe the barriers stack, but feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Item's just really good right now, though. Free everything, what you're already getting as you teleport around, plus it synergizes with all the ability duration that you already have. It's pretty good. Transcendent cooldown is also a pretty good buy for this character. It helps all of your items have faster cooldowns, which doesn't matter as much for the most part because you really only have one active item, and this is mostly for active items, but it is still pretty good because it'll make your reactive barrier come up more often. It'll make the procs of your toxic bullets come back more often. It'll also make Recharging Rush proc more often on top of just everything you have proccing more often, like Spirit Rend. It's pretty good, but it's not that core to the build because we only really get one active item, and that's usually what this is bought for. Next up is Crippling Headshot. This is crazy good if you're slot locked by the time you need to buy this to get those massive shred and healing reduction things. You can sell Spirit Rend for it. It's not a total one-to-one because Spirit Rend will overall shred more protections if you hit all your headshots, but Crippling Headshot is a bigger burst of shred immediately, and it'll overall help your team out more because it also has healing reduction built in. Silencer is in here because we run Ricochet, and Silencer is really good with Ricochet, and this can be really good if you're going to those fights where you just really need to silence the enemy team so they can't be spamming you with their abilities. Inhibitor is in here not because it's as good as it used to be. It lost 15% weapon damage recently, but the damage penalty it applies does stack with the damage penalty of your Scarabs, making people have like 60% less damage that they do overall, which will really frustrate some people. E-Shift is on here because it's a pretty powerful defensive item that just allows you to avoid all damage. It does scale with superior duration, by the way, if y'all aren't knowers, which is really nice. It also makes the buff afterwards scale with superior duration. It's also just really good survivability, but all the buffs that you get when you come out of it are also really strong. It's really good for fighting at mid-boss or fighting in base or invading the enemy team's base. Just generally a strong item. Last item we have here is Echo Shard. Now, I've seen a lot of people be really high on Echo Shard and Mirage lately, and I agree that it does work with their kit, and it is strong. I'm not as high on it as other people. Getting 5% fire rate, 5% spirit resist, and 5% bullet resist on an item is not a ton for the 6,400 soul investment. And while, yes, you do get to now Dust Devil 4 times in a row, because you'll get to Dust Devil and then use its reactivation, and then Echo Shard, and then Dust Devil, and then reactivation it, making it so that you have a really long portion of bullet evasion duration. If you're not fighting into an enemy team that has tons of mouse 1 carries, this item's value just goes into the toilet, which is why it's not part of the core build. However, if you're going into a team that has Venator, Wraith, Haze, Viper, all at the same time somehow, it's definitely worth an idea and a pickup, because that means that you can make your bullet evasion chance, which goes up to 5 seconds, by the way, with superior duration. With the Echo Shard, that means it'll be 5 seconds, and then another 5 on the reactivation, so 10, and then another 5 seconds, and another 5 seconds on the reactivation off the Echo Shard, leading to 20 straight seconds of 60% bullet evasion. And if you're not killing the enemy team in 20 seconds in a late game team fight, maybe work on your aim a little bit, because Mirage should be able to proc Jin's Mark pretty quick in a late game team fight, and 20 seconds is more than enough time to proc it 5 times to blow someone up. Let's talk some tips and tricks about the character. Now, laning phase is always important on every character, because obviously you don't want to lose lane. But Mirage's laning phase feels a bit more important to their character than most other characters' laning phases, in my opinion. And I think that's simply because if you get ahead on Mirage, you are really, really hard to deal with. If you get to the point where you have 2 points in Fire Scarabs and maxed out Jin's Mark, people are going to absolutely explode when you rotate into their lane and cause problems. The character does a lot of damage in the early to mid game and is also really hard to deal with because of how much health they heal off Fire Scarabs. So, what do if you start pushing in waves and you're winning lane and you've taken out their Guardian and the enemy team's nowhere to be found? Well, you go, alright, great, I'm gonna go find someone else to fight. And you show up to another lane and you help them kill a Guardian, and then you go back to your lane and you keep farming and you keep making sure that your lead doesn't go away. Because of this character's ability to just be other places on the map, the better it is that your lane went well so that you can use that ability to rotate to where other people might need help. Now, another tip I have for you here is knowing when you use ult and when you use fast zip. So using zipline speed boost is obviously a big part of this game, and playing around the cooldown of that several 100-second cooldown is a pretty big deal. And knowing when you can use it to get back to base, heal up, buy stuff, and then run to another lane is pretty good. When you also have the ability to just go, alright, cool, I need to be somewhere else. Learning how to play around your fast zipline is a different idea altogether. Learning when you have to teleport and when you have to zipline is a different thing altogether. If, say for example, the enemy team is pushing in on green walker, right as you're finishing getting waves pushed out on yellow lane, you don't want to hop on zip, fast zip back to base, and then fast zip over. That'll take a really, really long time. Instead, you just want to TP over to the lane and be here ready to fight as fast as possible. But if, for example, you did that, this fight went well, your team got like a kill and pushed the enemy back, and now the enemy team is starting to push on yellow, like they have minions around here on the map. Well, that's definitely much more of a time where you just hop on the zipline and zip boost over. It very much depends on how the enemy team is fighting on the map, and you have to do different responses to them. You can also make things happen in the inverse, where you're the one who's pushing in on the enemy team's area of the map, and then you use your teleport to get out of that part of the map. Now, this is something to remember. This has a channel time of 2 seconds, but if you get hurt during it, it restarts. Which is why something that you should really learn is where all of the little veil hidey holes are. Because all you need is 2 seconds. And if you can get to a veil hidey hole and immediately slam, I'm going to teleport back to base as fast as possible, odds are you could probably get there before the enemy team notices that you're leaving. Another tip for you here on Mirage is that in lane, you need to learn your distance at which you can mark someone. As you can tell from all the way back here, I cannot mark this Inferno spot. However, once I get right here, which is like a step closer, I can start applying marks. It's also something to know is that the amount of time you have to mark someone multiple times early game with Jin's Mark is a lot shorter than you'd imagine. The mark only lasts for 5 seconds, but you have to wait 30 seconds to shoot them again if you don't have compressed cooldown up. Which means that you really can only shoot them after this is like more than halfway gone. And so you want to be able to shoot them just at the right time so that you can make sure you get as much damage on them as possible into the max stack territory. Another laning phase tip for you is that if you can get in close enough to parry a Guardian, you can use your Dust Devil to get almost as far away as you need to be to make it stop hitting you again. Which is pretty useful information to know that once you parry it, if you Dust Devil away, you've gotten most of the distance away to be safe. Another Mirage tip I have for you is that you can actually use movement out of Dust Devil. So you can Dust Devil into a dash jump, for example. You can Dust Devil into a dash into a slide. You can Dust Devil into a side hop, so to get a lot of forward momentum. You can Dust Devil into most normal movement. I do believe one of the only problems is that you can't actually do it into a wall jump of some variety. So while Dust Devil does give you a lot of movement and a lot of forward momentum, it can be hard to bounce off walls and go sideways. So you're a little predictable inside of it. So that's that. That was a beginner's guide to Mirage. I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope this video was interesting to you. If you liked it, like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. All those things really help out the channel a lot. I really appreciate all the comments and support that I get on all these videos. Y'all are wonderful. But for now, thanks for hanging out and watching. Y'all are cool, and I appreciate all of you, and I hope to catch you all in the next one.